Seeing what others don't see is an electrical risk to the mind. Tesla was right. And that night in 1895, in the dim light of his New York laboratory, he realized he had crossed an invisible line. Nikola Tesla was faced with something no human being should witness alone: the pure vibrational structure of reality revealing itself as a web of electric blue light pulsing between the walls. He wasn't hallucinating. The instruments confirmed it. But his eyes now saw beyond the instruments. "When you see the field," he wrote that morning with trembling hands, "the field also starts to see you." 3 days later, Tesla was found by his assistant passed out on the laboratory floor, bleeding from his nose, muttering equations in languages he had never studied. Doctors diagnosed nervous exhaustion, but Tesla knew the truth. He had seen too much. And now, something inside his mind was different, connected to a current that never stopped flowing. He tried to return to normal life. Impossible. The people around him seemed opaque, like ghosts disconnected from themselves. He saw intentions before words, felt lies like static shocks in the air, knew when someone was about to get sick just by observing the absent sparkle in their eyes. It was as if the entire world operated on a slow, dead frequency, while Tesla vibrated at a voltage that burned his own neural structure. "They can't hear me," he noted in his diary. "I talk about energy and they hear electricity. I talk about vibration and they think about sound. I talk about the living universe and they see inert matter. I'm talking to myself in a language that only exists within me." That's when the real torment began. It wasn't just loneliness. It was a kind of dimensional exile. Tesla was seeing the hidden matrix of reality, but each revelation took him further away from the people around him. His investors abandoned him. His colleagues called him crazy. The woman he silently loved, a pianist named Catherine, looked at him fearfully after he described how he saw music materialize into geometric patterns in the air. She never came back. And then came the question that Tesla couldn't silence. What happens to a human mind when it is forced to process information that biology itself was not designed to handle? He started documenting everything, not just the scientific discoveries, but the psychological toll of each new layer of perception. His notes revealed a terrifying pattern. The more he saw, the less he could sleep. The more I understood, the more isolated I became. The more he connected to the universal field, the more he disconnected from humanity itself. "Expanded consciousness is not a gift," he wrote in smeared ink. "It's a sentence. Because once you see the invisible gears moving the world, you can never pretend you live in a random universe." Tesla started avoiding mirrors. When he looked at himself, he saw something other than his own reflection, as if multiple versions of himself were superimposed, vibrating at slightly different frequencies. He felt he was losing track of which version was the real one. It was becoming translucent to itself, but the scariest thing was yet to come. Because Tesla wasn't the only one who had crossed that line. One autumn afternoon, he received an anonymous letter. No sender, no signature, just one sentence written in shaky handwriting. "You're also seeing the shadows move, aren't you?" Tesla felt an electric shiver run down his spine, just because he was. Over the past few weeks, he had noticed distorted figures at the edges of his vision, forms that did not obey the laws of light, presences that seemed to observe him from an angle that did not exist in three-dimensional space. He burned the letter immediately, but that night, another arrived, and another, all saying the same thing, with different words: "They know you're watching." Tesla locked himself in his laboratory for an entire week. When he finally left, he had made a decision. He would find the other minds that had crossed the threshold. He would find out if this electrical hazard could be controlled, reversed, or if it was permanent. And he would understand who, or what, was sending those letters. Because deep in his scientific soul, Tesla already knew the answer, and she terrified him. Some doors once opened can no longer be closed. If this story is awakening something within you, something that resonates with what Tesla felt, that feeling of seeing beyond the veil, subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will change the way you see your own mind. Tesla didn't sleep that week. Not by choice, but because his brain just wouldn't shut down anymore. It was as if someone had gone the switch. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw equations forming themselves, circuits of light drawing themselves in the dark, voices whispering truths that he hadn't asked. He needed answers, and he started with the only place he thought he could find them: nursing homes. Over the course of 3 months, Tesla discreetly visited 7 psychiatric institutions in and around New York. He wasn't going as a doctor or scientist. I was going as investigator. He was looking for a specific pattern: patients diagnosed with visual delusions, persistent hallucinations, and, most importantly, an abnormal ability to predict events before they happen, and he found it. In Blackwell's Island State Asylum, locked in a padded cell, was a man named Thomas Byrne, former telegraphy engineer, 42 years, hospitalized 6 months ago after having a nervous breakdown at work, claiming that messages were arriving before they were sent. When Tesla entered the cell, Thomas was sitting in the corner, drawing something on the wall with his fingernails. It wasn't a scribble. It was a perfect technical diagram of an electrical circuit that Tesla recognized immediately, because it was one of the inventions he himself was developing in secret. "You see the field," Tesla said, his voice low. Thomas stopped. He turned slowly. His eyes were sunken, surrounded by purple circles, but within them there was a piercing lucidity. "You too," Thomas replied, "and that's why you're here, because you need to know if you're going crazy or evolving." Tesla sat on the floor of his cell, forgetting all pretense of professional distance. "When did it start?" Tesla asked. "After I repaired a transmission tower during a storm. I got a high-voltage shock. I should have died, but I didn't. I woke up 3 days later and it was different. I saw electrical currents inside the walls. I saw people's thoughts like colorful clouds around their heads. I saw the future form like fog before solidifying into reality." Tesla felt his heart accelerate. That was exactly what he was experiencing. "And what happened?" Thomas laughed bitterly. "I made the mistake of telling. I told my wife. I told my boss. I told the doctor. And they all said the same thing. 'You're sick, Thomas. You need help.' Nobody wanted to know if I was right. They just wanted me to stop saying things that scared them." "What about the letters?" Tesla asked, taking one of the anonymous pieces of mail out of his pocket. "Did you get letters too?" Thomas's face turned pale. He nodded slowly. "They arrived a week before I was admitted, saying that I was seeing things I shouldn't be seeing, that I needed to stop, that there were consequences." "Who sent it?" Thomas approached, lowering his voice to a barely audible whisper. "I don't know, but I know what they are. They're not people, Tesla. They're guardians of perception. They monitor who crosses the threshold, and when someone sees too much," he pointed to the cell walls, "they make sure this person is silenced, one way or another." Tesla felt a chill run through his body. It wasn't paranoia. He was hearing something that made too much sense, a hidden pattern finally revealing itself. "How many more?" Tesla asked. "How many other people have crossed that threshold?" "More than you might think, but most disappear. Some die in accidents. Others, like me, are locked away and medicated until they lose the ability to see. And some," Thomas hesitated, "some learn to hide. They learn to pretend they are normal. They learn to live with one foot in each reality." Tesla left the asylum with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear: he was not alone, and what was happening to him wasn't random. It was systematic, controlled. There was a force, or forces, keeping humanity in a specific range of perception, and anyone who tried to leave that range was neutralized. But why? Over the next few weeks, Tesla became obsessed. He began charting every case he could find. Scientists who had had sudden nervous breakdowns, inventors who went crazy after revolutionary discoveries, mystics who were institutionalized after claiming to have visions of the structure of the universe. The pattern was undeniable. They had all touched something, one frequency, a layer of reality that should not be accessed, and they had all been punished. Tesla then realized that he was dealing with something much bigger than his own mental breakdown. He was in the middle of an invisible war, a war for human consciousness. On one side were those who wanted to expand, evolve, transcend. On the other, there were those who wanted to keep humanity dormant, controlled, limited, and Tesla had just become a target. That's when he found the second letter. But this time, she was different. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. "If you want to understand what's going on, come to the Riverside Observatory at 3 in the morning, alone. There are others like you, and we know how to survive what you're seeing." Tesla held the letter, his hands shaking. Was it a trap, or was it the answer he was looking for? He looked out the window of his laboratory. Outside, the world continued as normal. People walked the streets, unaware of the invisible electrical web that connected them, unaware that they were living in a perceptual prison. Tesla has made its decision. He would go to the meeting, because if there was a chance, however small, of understanding what was happening to his mind, he needed to take a chance. But as he put the letter away, something caught his attention. In the corner of the paper, almost invisible, was a symbol drawn in pencil. A symbol he had never seen before, but instantly recognized. It was the same symbol that Thomas Byrne was drawing on the cell wall. And Tesla knew, with a certainty that chilled his blood, he was about to discover who really controlled human perception, and why they were so afraid of people like him. 3 in the morning. The Riverside Observatory was plunged into darkness, only the outline of the dome silhouetted against the starless sky. Tesla arrived on foot, leaving his carriage 3 blocks behind. If it was a trap, he wouldn't make it easy. The main door was unlocked. He entered. The silence inside was absolute, but not empty. Tesla could feel that heightened sensitivity that was now part of him, the presence of other minds, human vibrations echoing through space like invisible heat waves. "Come up," a female voice came from the spiral stairs, firm, but not hostile. Tesla rose. Each step amplified the feeling of entering unknown territory. When he reached the top, he found 5 people sitting in a circle around an unlit telescope. No lamps on, just the moonlight coming through the cracks in the dome, and yet he could see each face with abnormal clarity. "Welcome, Mr. Tesla," said the woman who had spoken. She was about 50 years old, gray hair tied in a bun, gold-rimmed glasses. There was something of a teacher about her, but also of a general. "My name is Eleanor Watts, physics, former professor at Columbia University. I was fired when I started seeing mathematical patterns floating in the air during my classes." Tesla looked at the others. A middle-aged black man wearing simple clothes, a young woman in her early 20s with an intense look, a slight gentleman with the hands of a surgeon, and a boy who couldn't have been more than 17. "We've all crossed the threshold," Eleanor continued, each in a different way, but the result was the same. We began to see the energetic structure behind physical reality, and we were all dealt the cards. "Who sends them?" Tesla asked directly. "We don't know for sure," the black man replied. His voice was deep, careful. "My name is Marcus. I worked as a telegraph operator until I had an accident similar to the man you visited on Blackwell's Island. Yes, we knew you were investigating." He smiled slightly. "We investigated you too." Tesla was not surprised. He would have done the same. "What we know," Marcus continued, "is that there is an organization, no official name, no public face, but with significant resources. They monitor people like us, scientists, inventors, mystics, anyone who shows signs of expanded perception, and they do everything they can to keep us isolated, discredited, or eliminated." "Why?" Tesla felt anger rising. "Why would anyone fight the evolution of human consciousness?" "Control," said the young woman. Her name was Sarah, and there was something fierce in her eyes. "If people woke up to the fact that reality is malleable, that thought literally shapes the world around us, that we are active co-creators and not passive observers, what would happen to systems of power, to governments, to religions, to all the structure that depends on keeping people obedient and blind?" Tesla felt every word like a shock, because it made sense, a terrible and obvious sense. "They're afraid of a mass awakening," Eleanor added, "and so any mind that begins to see beyond the veil needs to be neutralized before it spreads that vision to others." "And how did you survive?" Tesla asked. "Why weren't they institutionalized or killed?" It was the frail man who responded. He had a German accent and hands that shook slightly. "We learned the most important rule. Never reveal what you see. Never try to prove it. Never try to convince. Keep your discoveries hidden. Live 2 lives. The public one, where you pretend to be normal, and the private one, where you actually work." "It's a prison," the boy said suddenly. He had piercing blue eyes and a sadness that didn't match his age. "You can never be completely honest again. You can never share what you really know again. You live in exile, even when surrounded by people." Tesla recognized the pain in those words. That was exactly what he was feeling. "But there's a reason we asked you to come." Eleanor stood up, walking over to a table covered with documents. "We are not just surviving, we are working. In secret for years we have been gathering information about this organization that hunts us, and we have discovered something disturbing." She spread photographs, newspaper clippings, diagrams on the table. "They are not just silencing individuals, they are suppressing technologies. Any invention that could elevate human consciousness or liberate humanity from systems of dependency is blocked, sabotaged, or appropriated and hidden." Tesla looked at the documents. He recognized some names: inventors who had disappeared, patents that had been denied without explanation, laboratories that had mysteriously caught fire. "And there's something else," Marcus said, pointing to a map with red markings. "We traced the origin of the letters. They come from different places, but they all pass through one central point, an isolated property in Albany, an unmarked compound, no public records, but with military security." "What do you think is there?" Tesla asked, even though he already knew the answer. "We find," Eleanor said slowly, "that there are people like us, people who have crossed the threshold, but who, instead of being silenced, have been co-opted, forced to use their expanded abilities to serve this organization, to track other awakened ones, to develop mind control technologies, to keep humanity asleep." The silence that followed was heavy. "You're asking me to go there," Tesla said. It wasn't a question. "No," Eleanor replied. "We're asking you to help us do something none of us have the courage to do alone. Expose this organization. Bring this hidden war to light, because you, Tesla, have something that none of us have." "What?" "Public credibility. You're famous, respected. If you reveal what's going on, people will listen. Maybe they won't believe it, but they will listen. And that might be enough to start waking them up." Tesla felt the weight of choice. He could remain hidden, surviving in the shadows like them, or he could risk everything, his reputation, his freedom, perhaps his life, to give humanity a chance to see what he was seeing. "I need to think," Tesla said. "You have 3 days," Eleanor replied. "After that, they'll know you were here, and they'll intensify their surveillance of you. If you decide to help us, come back here at once. If you don't, we'll understand, and you'll never hear from us again." Tesla went down the stairs in silence. When he left the observatory, the sky was beginning to lighten. He walked through the empty streets of New York, watching the city wake up, people opening stores, workers going to factories, children running to schools, everyone living in a manufactured reality, all trapped in a controlled frequency, and he had the power to begin to free them. But as he walked, Tesla noticed something. A man in a gray overcoat across the street, walking at the same speed as him, stopping when he stopped. Tesla turned into an alley. The man turned too. They already knew. They always knew. And Tesla realized that his choice had perhaps already been made for him. Because when you see the prison, you can no longer pretend to be free, and they never leave a conscious prisoner alive for long. Tesla didn't come home. He knew his laboratory would already be under surveillance. Instead, he went to the one place where he thought he might get a few hours head start, the abandoned basement of an old theater on the Bowery, a space he had rented years ago for experiments that required total isolation. He had 72 hours to make a decision, but deep down, I already knew what I would do. Because that morning, while being followed through the streets, Tesla had a revelation that changed everything. He realized that he wasn't just fighting for himself or that small group of awakened ones. He was fighting for every human mind that didn't yet know it was imprisoned. And if there was a chance, however infinitesimal, of breaking this prison, he needed to try, but not in the way Eleanor suggested. Tesla would not expose the organization publicly. That would be suicide, and worse, it would be ineffective. People don't wake up for arguments. They wake up by experience, for feeling in your own skin the difference between being asleep and being awake. Then Tesla began working on the most dangerous invention of his life. He called it the consciousness resonator. The idea was simple and revolutionary, a device that emitted a specific electromagnetic frequency, calibrated to stimulate the pineal gland and activate dormant areas of the human brain. In theory, anyone exposed to this frequency for long enough would begin to notice the invisible energy field. I would begin to see beyond the veil. It was a forced awakening, an accelerated evolution, a virus of consciousness. For 2 days and 2 nights, Tesla worked non-stop. He assembled the prototype using parts he had saved, copper wires wound in specific geometric patterns, quartz crystals tuned to harmonic frequencies, and an alternating current generator modified to pulse in rhythms that mirrored theta brainwaves. When he finally turned on the device, he felt the entire room vibrate at an almost imperceptible frequency. The walls seemed to become translucent for a second. He could see energy flowing through the circuits like rivers of living light. It worked. But there was a problem. The resonator needed a massive power source to affect more than a few people in a small radius. It needed to be connected to something big, something that was already transmitting energy to the entire city. And Tesla knew exactly where: the Pearl Street Power Station, the electric heart of New York. If he could connect the resonator to that network, he could broadcast the frequency to thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of people simultaneously. It would be the greatest consciousness experiment ever carried out. It would also be impossible to hide. Tesla knew that the moment he activated the resonator on an urban scale, the organization would know. They would come, and there would be no second chances. But he had a trump card, something no one expected. On the 3rd night, Tesla did not return to the Riverside Observatory. Instead, he sent a coded message to Eleanor through a street urchin. Change of plans. Pearl Street. Midnight tomorrow. Bring protection. And then he did something that not even he expected to do. He sought out Thomas Byrne. By bribing 2 guards and a corrupt asylum director, Tesla managed to get Thomas out of Blackwell's Island by outside medical evaluation. When they were alone in a carriage crossing the bridge, Thomas looked at him with those deep eyes and asked, "Are you going to do what I think you're going to do?" "I'll wake them up by force," Tesla replied. "All at once. Before they can stop us." Thomas was silent for a long moment. Then he started laughing. It wasn't a laugh of joy. It was a laugh from someone who finally sees justice being done after years of torture. They're going to kill you, Thomas said. I know, and maybe it won't work, I know. But if it works, Thomas looked out the window at the sleeping city. If it works, you will change the world forever. Tesla nodded. That's why I need you. You know how they think, how they operate. You can predict their movements. I can, Thomas admitted. But there's something you need to know before you do that. He turned around, his face serious. Forced awakening is not painless, Tesla. When a mind that has been asleep for decades is suddenly exposed to the full truth of reality, some can't handle it, some break. You may end up creating more suffering than liberation. Tesla felt the weight of those words, but he responded with conviction. Living in your sleep is suffering too. It's just suffering we've become accustomed to accepting. At least if I do this, they'll have a choice. They'll know there's something beyond prison. Thomas studied her face for a long time. Then he extended his hand. So let's wake up this world, Tesla, even if it kills us. Midnight, Pearl Street Power Station. Tesla, Thomas, and the 5 members of Eleanor's group were hiding in the station's basement, where giant generators roared like mechanical monsters. The resonator was assembled, connected directly to the main transmission line. When I turn this on, Tesla explained, you'll feel it first. The frequency will amplify through the electrical grid and reach every building, every wire, every light bulb connected to the system. Anyone awake in New York right now will experience a pulse of expanded consciousness. It may only last a few seconds, but it will be enough to plant the seed. And them? Eleanor asked, pointing upwards, where they knew agents from the organization were already surrounding the building. They're going to try to stop us. That's why you need to hold the doors for the next 3 minutes. That's all I need. Marcus checked his gun. Sarah and the young boy blocked the entrances with metal bars. The German doctor stood next to Tesla, ready to help. Now, Tesla said, and turned on the resonator. The sound started low, almost inaudible. Then it grew. It was not a physical sound, but a vibration that resonated in the bones, in the blood, in the very core of consciousness. Hence, the station's lights began to flash in rhythmic patterns. The generators sped up, and then it happened. All over New York, people awake at that moment stopped. Night workers put down their tools. Police officers on patrol were paralyzed. Prostitutes on street corners looked up to the sky. Doctors on duty felt their hands shake. For 3 eternal seconds, thousands of minds touched the field. They saw the invisible electrical web connecting all living beings. They felt thoughts flowing like currents between people. They realized that reality was not solid, but rather a constant vibrational dance. And then, as quickly as it came, the feeling passed. But the seed was planted. The station doors exploded. Men in black invaded the underground with military violence. Eleanor and the others resisted but were outnumbered. Tesla continued adjusting the resonator, prolonging the pulse until the last possible second. One shot. Thomas fell, hit in the shoulder, but he shouted, 30 seconds! Hold another 30 seconds! And then, when all seemed lost, something unexpected happened. The agents themselves began to stop, because they were also being hit by the frequency. His hands shook, their weapons fell. For a brief moment, they saw it too. And in that moment of hesitation, Tesla disconnected the resonator and activated the sequence he had programmed, an overload that destroyed the device completely, erasing any evidence of how it worked. But the damage was done. As Tesla was dragged out of the station, handcuffed, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, he looked up at the sky and saw something that made him smile. In windows all over the city, people were awake, looking at your own hands as if seeing them for the first time, touching the walls, looking at each other with a new question in their eyes. Did you feel that too? The awakening had begun, and no one, not every organization in the world, could stop him anymore. Tesla was taken to an unnamed place. No windows, no marks. Just a white room with a metal chair and a man in an impeccable suit waiting on the other side of the table. The man did not introduce himself. It didn't need to. Tesla recognized the type, someone who never appeared in photographs, whose name was not in any records, but who controlled more power than presidents or tycoons. You made a serious mistake, Mr. Tesla, the man said in a polite, icy voice. Exposed thousands of civilians to an unauthorized experiment, caused panic, disturbed public order. I showed the truth, Tesla replied, blood still dripping from his split lip. Something you spent decades hiding. True? The man tilted his head. What arrogance. You think you know what's best for humanity? Let me tell you what happens when ordinary people see their truth without preparation. He opened a folder and spread reports on the table. Since your little demonstration last night, 17 people have thrown themselves off buildings, believing they can fly because they saw that gravity is illusory. 34 have been hospitalized for complete psychotic breakdowns. Hundreds are reporting severe insomnia, inability to distinguish thoughts from reality, paralyzing existential terror. You haven't freed anyone, Tesla. You've broken minds. Tesla felt every word like a knife because Thomas was right. The forced awakening had a price. But then he looked into the man's eyes and saw something that changed everything: fear. This powerful man, part of an organization that had controlled human perception for generations, was afraid, and Tesla understood why. "You're losing control," Tesla said slowly, "because even though 17 people were lost in the madness, thousands have woken up and are starting to ask questions. They are reconnecting, forming groups, sharing experiences. You can arrest me, you can kill me, but you can no longer erase what was seen." The man stood up, closing the folder with restrained violence. "We always knew this would eventually happen, that some arrogant genius would try to free humanity. But you don't know what you're fighting against. This isn't a modern conspiracy, Tesla. This is an architecture of control that has existed for millennia. Entire civilizations have been erased because they discovered too much, too quickly. We are not villains. We are stewards. We maintain the balance, because the alternative to control is not freedom, it is chaos." "Then kill me," Tesla said. "Prove your point." The man smiled coldly. "Killing him would turn you into a martyr. No, let's do something much more effective. Let's erase your credibility. In the coming months, you will be painted as crazy. Your patents will be challenged. Your financiers will abandon you. Your friends will turn away. And when you scream about energy fields and conspiracies, no one will listen, because you will just be bad. Is a brilliant inventor gone mad?" Tesla felt the plan close around him like a perfect trap, but even so, he didn't regret it. "Do whatever you want with me," he said calmly. "But you can't stop what you started, because I didn't do it alone, and the others will continue." "The others?" The man laughed. "Eleanor Watts was found dead in a house fire this morning. Marcus disappeared. Sarah is being sued for trespassing. The boy was returned to his parents with a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And Thomas Byrne, well, he should never have left the asylum." Tesla felt his heart sink. They had destroyed everyone, eliminated each piece from the board, except one. "But there's something you don't know," Tesla said, and for the first time, it was his turn to smile. "I did not destroy the resonator. I just destroyed that prototype. The plans, the specs, the math behind the frequency, everything was copied, hidden, and distributed to dozens of people around the world. Scientists you never monitored, inventors in countries you don't control, and eventually, someone will rebuild. It will get better. We'll do it again." The control mask on the man's face cracked for a second. "You're bluffing. Test me. Spend the next 50 years trying to find all the copies, spending resources, tracking down clues, and even then they will never be sure, because the idea now exists, and ideas once released cannot be imprisoned." Tesla was released 3 days later. No explanation, no formal charges. But when he returned to the world, it was just as the man had promised. He was ruined. Newspapers published articles questioning his sanity. Investors canceled contracts. Colleagues avoided his gaze. He became an eccentric, lonely, forgotten figure in the last years of his life. But something had changed. Something small, but irreversible. In cities around the world, discrete groups began to form. People who had felt the pulse that night, or who had been touched indirectly by those who had. They met in basements, in libraries, in parks. They shared experiences. They developed practices to expand perception in a safe, gradual way. It wasn't a revolution, it was a silent evolution. And when Tesla died in 1943, alone in a cheap hotel room, he died knowing that he had planted something that no organization could completely eradicate anymore. Because seeing what others don't see is dangerous. It's isolating. It's an electrical hazard to the mind, but it's also the only way to get out of prison. And Tesla proved that even a spark, a single moment of shared clarity, can start a fire that burns for generations. Years later, a young physicist at Princeton found a yellowed envelope hidden among old books in the university library. Inside were equations in Tesla's handwriting, and a note: "To anyone who finds this, don't make my mistake. Don't force awakening, but also don't allow the world to fall asleep again. Teach, gradually, with compassion. Because the biggest discovery I made wasn't about electricity or frequencies. It was that human consciousness, when expanded with care and love, does not break. It blooms." And so, generation after generation, the flame was kept alive, not in great revolutions, but in small transmissions. A teacher inspiring a student, a scientist sharing a forbidden discovery, an artist capturing on canvas what normal eyes cannot see. The organization still exists, still monitors, still trying to control, but it can no longer completely erase what Tesla started, because the truth, once seen, leaves a scar on the soul, a brand that doesn't disappear, and each person it sees leaves that mark on others, like a benign virus of consciousness slowly spreading through humanity. Tesla was right. Seeing what others don't see is dangerous, but not seeing is even more dangerous, because a world of blind people is a world easily controlled. But a world where at least some see, this world has a chance to finally wake up, and when you wake up, no invisible prison will hold you anymore. The question that remains is not whether humanity will awaken, it's whether you're ready to be one of the sparks. If this story touched something deep in you, if you felt there were truths here that resonate beyond words, subscribe to the channel, because there are more stories like this waiting to be told. Stories about those who have seen too much, that they felt too much, who paid the price for awakening. And maybe together we can do what Tesla couldn't do alone. Awaken the world not with force, but with clarity, not with fear, but with love. The frequency of truth is already transmitting. You just need to tune in.